So you're a dyslexic and you don't feel dysfunctional? You don't feel disabled? Well, neither do I. But still, we're stigmatized. Here's why. So within our society, we have the tendency to look at people's disabilities rather than their abilities. And this is true in many ways. But in recent years, there is like a development where we're starting to look more at these abilities. But still, there seems to be a tendency to kind of hold on to the perspective of disability. And I wondered why that might be. So what I want to do is I want to look at different people that are involved when it comes to diagnosing dyslexia and people that might benefit from dyslexics being diagnosed. So we're going to look at the parents of dyslexics, we're going to look at teachers, we're going to look at learned therapists, and we're going to look at the dyslexic, him or herself. For loving parents, it will be completely normal that they will want their kid to receive the best aid as possible. So what happens is that as soon as a kid is diagnosed, it has certain privileges. That means it has the privilege, for example, to take a little more time when it comes to exams. Even I got more time in university when I had language testing. So you have that privilege. And on top of that, what also comes with the diagnosis, perhaps certain funding. In Germany, that's the case. If your kid is diagnosed, you will receive funding from the state. So we have this connection between certain privileges and the diagnosis. But if we now want to get away from this negative perspective on people and start looking more at the strengths of individuals, then this might be a problem, because parents in this case are a force that lead us more to looking at the deficiencies rather than the abilities. Next on our list are teachers. So if you look at the teacher that tries to teach reading and writing to a dyslexic child, one can imagine their frustration at a certain point. I mean, they tried it with me, and according to my parents, I was not able to, they were not able to say that I was really reading at the end of the first school that I went to. Teachers, of course, frustrated, and they have a difficulty explaining why that is. And one way they can explain it is to say, well, I didn't do a good job. I really didn't teach in a way that the student or the pupil could grasp what I was saying and what I was teaching. So that's one way. The other way that comes with a diagnosis often is that you say, oh yeah, there is something within the child that makes it difficult for him or her to learn to read and write. So you have an internal explanation, I'm the reason, or you have an external reason, the child is at fault. And if you choose the second option, child is at fault, then it alleviates some of these unwanted feelings. So we can see also when it comes to the teacher, there is a motivation to say, let's diagnose the child. Let's see if there's something wrong with the child. What we need to remember though is that there are multiple aspects to be considered if we want to explain why a kid has trouble reading and writing. So now we're looking at the third group of people that have an influence on our tendency to diagnose. And those are the people that diagnose themselves. So we're looking at learned therapists. And well, what I've seen is that you have a institution, you have a center where they diagnose young children, and in that center you have two things combined. You have the learn therapy and you have the diagnosing. So basically parents come in, the learn therapist says your child has a problem, and then they say one sentence after that, but we have a solution for you. You can come and give us money for our learn therapy. So therefore they have a very clear interest in diagnosing people. For the dyslexic, a diagnosis is very much a double-edged sword. I can say that from my own experience. On the one hand, it gave me a reason for why I'm struggling in certain areas. And at the other side, we are confronted with a stigma. So a negative label that has been enforced onto me. And for sake of the explanation, these students often tend to adopt that negative stigma, and I've been doing that myself in some parts too. So if everything is good, then it stays confined to the area of reading and writing. But very often what happens is that it spreads throughout the overall self-image of a dyslexic. And then we really need to start reframing. We need to start putting dyslexia into a different context. And I think neurodiversity does that by looking, or by defining dyslexia not as a disability, but as part of natural variation within humans. And what is also very positive is that it states that you can have a lot of troubles in one area and at the same time be excelling and be absolutely phenomenal in a different area. So yeah, you have both parts. And then I think we get to a more balanced idea of self. So I would like to conclude by saying that too many people benefit from this diagnosis. And that might be one reason why this concept of neurodiversity that puts people with dyslexia into a much more positive light has such trouble taking off. Some words of caution though. If we, as dyslexics, say that everything is fine, then people will most likely not be so inclined anymore to say, okay, you get a different treatment. You will get some more time in exams. If you're saying, well, with me everything is okay, I'm completely fine, then why would they do so? So that is one issue that we run into and that we need to think about in order to get further ahead.